Okay, I guess we should get ready. Okay. Elliot, Shabbat Shalom. You're looking very elegant today.
Thank you. How are you?
He didn't say I'm looking elegant. What kind of friend are you? Guilt. if you take that seriously. Hey.
If I weren't close to the microphone, I'd say something right now.
If we're not
He's busted me.
laughing
Busting me.
during these times,
Yeah, you're
humor
right.
is extremely important.
And you.
There's nothing like great humor.
How's Ellen?
Fine. You know, we're a little still overwhelmed by what to do with our place, but that's, I'm just going to say whatever you want there. Whatever you want there. Everything's fine. Everything will work out. Oh, Ben Sachs is here. Ben, Shabbat Shalom. Everything's fine. How's Dana here?
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. Somewhere here. I don't see her.
Might still be out.
Yeah,
in the hall.
right outside.
No. Wait, no, that's not her back.
No. Oh, Felicia's with the kids. The kids, yeah. I like when there are kids here. Right?
So, Ellen, okay.
Yeah, everybody's fine.
This was in this morning's paper.
The growing risk for Jews to show that Jews on the Wall Street Journal.
I brought it in. I didn't get to read it.
Very, very good article. It's a scary thing, really.
Oh, yeah.
It is a scary thing.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a trend that already happened in Europe a while ago. Now it's here. Thanks. I think we're ready to begin. Is wish of Yom HaShabbat. Hallelujah. Nishmat kol chai doret shimcha d'Adonai. Martin Cohen is not here. I think we should begin. Everyone, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Let's take our places. Kavanah.
I have to ask you what you did
Tefillah.
last night to get the stream up.
We can begin. Page 147.
Push the button, or was it on?
Shochenat.
Push the button. Shochenad marom v'kadosh shemo
Shochenat Morov v'kadosh.
v'chatuv rananut tzadikim baronai le'yesharim navat tehila לפי ישרים תתהלל, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש.
ובמקלות רבבות, עמך בית ישראל.
שמך מלכנו בכל דור ודור, שכן חובת כל יצורים לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו, ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, לרומם, להדר, לברך, להלל קלס, על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי, עבדך משיחך. ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ. כי לך נא אדוני אלוהינו אלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, שיר ושבחה, הלל וזמרה, עוז וממשלה, נצח גדולה וגבורה, תהילה ותפארת, קדושה ומלכות, ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול ותשבחות, אל ההודאות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אלכי העולמים.
חצי קדיש.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
ויעמד דירה קירתי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה וזמן קריב יאמרו אמן.
אמן.
יהי שמי רב המוערך לעולם לא מעלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה ויאמרו אמן.
אמן.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך, לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Please be seated.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, יוצר אור ובורא חושך, עושה שלום ובורא את הכל. הכל יודוך והכל ישבחוך והכל יאמרו קדוש, הכל יאמרו
לא פתח בכל
אלא
טוב,
פתח
לא
לא צריך
רקיע.
אמרנו מנסרים אותו למלהלם ורחמם
המשובח מפואר מנסמים מאותו עולם אל עולם ברחם ורחם עלינו.
אין קרקך ואין זולתך, אפס בלתך ומדומה לך. אין קרקך אדוני אלוהינו בעולם הזה, ואין זולתך מלכנו לחיי עולם הבא. אפס בלתך גואלנו לימות המשיח, ואין דומה לך מושיענו לתחיית המתים.
Eladon, page 151.
אל אדון על כל המעשים, ברוך וברך בפי כל נשמה, גדלו וטובו מלא עולם, דעת ותבונה סובבים אותו, המתגאה על חיות הקודש, ונהדר בכבוד על המרכבה, זכות ומישור לפני חיסול, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו, טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו, יסרם בדעת בבינה ובהשכל, כוח וגבורה נתן בהם, להיות מושלים בקרב תבל, מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה, נאה זיוום בכל העולם, שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם, עושים בימה רצון קונם, פאר וכבוד נותנים לשמו, צהלה ורינה לזכר מלכותו, קרא לשמש ויזרח אור, ראה והתקין צורת הבנה, שבח נותנים לו, כל צבא מרום, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ויופנים וחיות הקודש. ליל אשר שבת מכל המעשים ביום השביעי.
ביום השביעי תעלה וישב בכיסא כבודו תפארת עד יום מנוחה, עונה קרא ליום השבת.
תתברך מושיענו על שבח מעשה ידיך, ביום הורי אור שעשית יפארוך הסלם.
153.
תתברך צורנו מלכנו וגואלנו, ברי קדושים ושתבח
ישתבח שמך למלכנו יסר משרתים.
כולם אהובים, כולם ברורים, כולם גיבורים, וכולם עושים בהמה ויראה רצון קונם, וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושה וטהרה, בשירה וזמרה, ומברכים ומשבחים ומפארים ומעריצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם האל המלך הגדול הגיבור והנורא קדוש הוא.
וכולם מקבלים עליהם
וכולם מקבלים עליהם עול מלכות שמיים זה מזה, ונותנים רשות זה לזה, להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח, בשפה ברורה ובנימה קדושה, כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך על הארץ כבודו.
ויופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מן האנסים ולמצורפים.
ואופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מתנסים למצרפים, לעומתם משבחים ויאמרים, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ליל ברוך נימות תיתנו למלך חיים בזמנות תשמעו. עושה חדשה פעם מלחמת זרת ומצמיח ישוע בורא פרוד מאורות תהילות תתנו לבלות המחדש בטבו בכל יום תמיד מעשה וראשית כאמור לעושה רם גדולים כל עולם חסדו אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות אהבה רבה אבטנה נרחם לא גדול אביק תרחם על אבינו מלאכם שבת אבינו מלאכם ושמו הריני נבטן תדק לבנו יחד לבנו להבה ליראת שמך
בהערננו בתורתך ותדבק ליבנו במצוותיך
והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו כי אל פועל ישועות אתה ובנו בחרת מקולם ולשון וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע סלע באמת להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה
Amen. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'yahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'otecha v'hayu havarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uv'shakpecha uv'kumecha ukshatam liot ayatecha v'hayu letotafot v'heinenecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uv'hishcharecha. Page 156. נתתי מצרתכם ביתו ונתתי עשב וצבאת ישמעו לכם וחרף בכם ויעשה שמיים וימטר ושמתם דברי עדה לבכם וכם נפשם ושתם אותם להיות עייתכם והיו לטוטפות בין עיניכם ודימתם אותם תפתם ושלמן יבואכם מכם לתת להם כמי השמיים על הארץ ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור דבר על בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי גדיהם לדורותם ונתנו על ציצית הכנף בתלתחת והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו זכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם ולא תעתורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני, אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני, אדוני אלוהיכם.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
ויציב ונכון. טוב יפה דבר הזה לעולם ועד אמת.
לדור ודור קיים ושמו קיים, וכיסו נכון ומלכותו וימונתו לעד קיימת.
157.
דבר החיים קיים נאמנים נחמן.
על אבותינו ואמותינו ועלינו ועבדנו ועדורותינו אמת.
אמת שתהו אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו מלכנו מלך אבותינו ואמותינו גואלנו גואל אבותינו ואמותינו יוצרנו צור ישועתנו פודנו מצילנו מעולם שמך אין אלוהים זולתך עזרת אבותינו ואמותינו אתה הוא מעולם מגן משיח ונאמר משפטה
אשרי איש ישמע
למצוותיו
ותורתך דבר חסדים
מצרים גאלתנו בית אבותינו
אמת התוריש ויעזורו מלדברים ולמשיח ממצרים
רם
גאתנו
וניסה גדלנו ממש פלגים
כל בכוריהם הרעת וכורכת וימצא כפקה טיפת בדין העברת הזאת שיבחו אהובים רם וניסה גדלו ונרם משבגים ויעוזר דלים ויעונה לי עמו ביית שבת
תהילות לאל עליון ברוך ומבורך משה מרים ובני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים
אדוני מי כמוך
נדר בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף אליהם שירה חדשה שבחו גאולים לשמך על שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו Adonai Yimloch Leolam Vaed. Tzur Yisrael, Kuma B'Ezrat Yisrael, Uferei Chinomecha, Yehuda B'Yisrael, Go Aleinu Adonai Tzvaot Shemo, Kadosh Yisrael, Baruch Atah Adonai,
Baruch
Shal Yisrael.
Together we begin the Amidah on page 159. Following the Kedusha, the remainder of the Amidah will be chanted silently through page 166.
Ya la 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 Adonai, Ya la 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 Sfatai Tiftach, Ya la 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 Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha, Ya la 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 Adonai, Ya la 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 Sfatai Tiftach, Ya la 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 Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu V'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Karnei Hakol V'Zocher Chastei Avot V'Imahot U'Mevi Goel Evnei V'neihem Leman Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Foked U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham U'Voked Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye Metim Atarav Lahoshia Mashiva Ruach U'Morid Agashem Mechakel Chayim Bechesed Mechaye Metim Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim U'Matir Asurim Umekayem emunato lishenei afar michamocha bal gevurot umidom elach melech memit umechayeh umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'emanata lahachayot metim Baruch Atah Adonai Machayeh HaMeitim.
Page 161. Kedusha, Kadesh, Shem Shemak Shemot B'Shmimarom, Kakatu V'Yadevi Brazil Zeviamar.
Nekadesh et Shemcha Ba'olam, Keshem Shemakti Shemoto B'Shmei Marom, Kakatu V'Yad Neviecha, V'kara Ze'el Zeviamar.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot,
Melech ha'aretz kevodo.
Az v'kol rash gadol, adir v'chasak mashmim kol minasim lamasrafim v'baruchim eru.
Az bekol ra'ash gadol, adir v'chazak mashmiim kol, mitnasim lo matzrafim, lo matam baruch yomeru.
Baruch kavod Adonai
mimakomo.
mimkomo kinu tofia, v'etzim lo kalena v'kakrim anachnu lach matati mo b'Sion. L'dor v'ador l'netzah netzach v'yeneinu tzorah v'malchutecha k'torah v'shirezecha ayetei tavim v'shiat tzidkecha.
Mimkomacha malkeinu tofia, v'timloch aleinu ki machakim anachnu lach. Matai timloch b'tzion, v'kara b'yameinu le'olam va'et tishkon. Tidgadal v'tidkadash, v'toch Yerushalayim ircha, לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים. ויהננו תירנה, תירנה מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך. ויהננו תירנה, תירנה מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך. על ידי דוד, על ידי דוד, על ידי דוד, משיח צדקך. על ידי דוד, על ידי דוד, על ידי דוד, משיח צדקך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גדלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני,
ברוך שמו.
האל הקדוש.
ישמעו שבמנת חלקו. ולא נתתו לדלכים לגורי ארצות, וישרנו חנתתם יבוא. אשר רצית בו וקידשת, חמדת ימים אתה קראת. שא בינו מטבך שם שבטיך. ונוכל וישרנו כשמך ברוך וששמך. ותחזן עלינו ושובך לציון ברכנו. ברוך אתה לך ישעת לציון. תמלאת לך. הטוב כטוב חמור. Yeah, fun. Yeah, it's fun. Of course, that's good. I can't. Couldn't hear. I didn't.
Yihu leratzon imrefi, imrefi, behegyon libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, v'goali, v'goali.
Kaddish Shalom, page 167.
Yitkara v'yitkara shemei rabbah.
Amen.
V'yalmad dirakirte v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayetecho beit Yisrael. V'agalav v'zman kariv v'yimaru.
Amen. Yesh meir Rabbah mevorach. V'olam lo me'ol maya.
Yitbarach.
Yibarach.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yet hadar, v'yet alev, v'yet alal, shmei dekudesha. Leila min kover chata v'shirata, tishvata v'nechamata, damiran v'alma v'yimeru.
Amen.
Tidkabal tzlotan avutam, dechol Yisrael, kadam avun divishmaya v'yimeru. Yehi shlom rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimeru.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mroma v'yaseh shalom.
Aleinu
v'yal
v'yal
kol
kol
Yisrael
Yisrael.
v'yimeru.
Amen. Yashakok, Stan Mitchell, Shabbat Shalom. Everyone who has joined us. And we are going to now proceed with the Torah service. And this is perhaps one of the great Shabbatot of the year, and we'll be reciting the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 Commandments, the Revelation. And I'm going to be asking all kinds of questions and trying to address them about the 10 Commandments, needed more than ever before. Let's begin. Torah service, page 168.
כמוך ואלוהים אדוני ואין כמעשיך מלכותך ומלכות כל עולמים וממשלתך בכל דור ודור
Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach, Adonai Imloch, Le'olam Va'ed, Adonai Os, Yemo Yitein, Adonai Yivarech,
את עמו ושלום, הרחמים,
Eitiv Avitzoncha, Et Zion, Tivneh Chomot Yerushalayim, Tivneh Chomot Yerushalayim, Ki Lecha Levavatavnu, Melechem Ram V'Nisa, Adonim.
ויהי בנשא אהרון ויאמר משה
Kuma Adonai v'yafutzu
אויביך וינוסו משונאיך מפניך כי מציון תצא תורה כי מציון תצא תורה ודבר אדוני בירושלים ברוך שנתן תורה תורה ברוך שנתן תורה תורה לעמו ישראל
Our tradition tells us that when we take the Torah out from the ark, we are reenacting the revelation at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai. With that great humility today, we recognize how this revelation changed the world dramatically for all human beings on earth. These words that we are going to recite have outlived monuments and empires. We want them to live through us until the end of time. We owe it to our ancestors to keep Torah alive. They struggled and suffered to preserve our way of life. They knew this to be their most precious gift to us. We owe it to our children to keep Torah alive. For why should they be spiritual paupers when the riches of this Jewish heritage can be theirs? We owe it to the world to keep Torah alive. This is a message which the world needs to hear, and I'm going to add more than ever. We owe it to God to continue as a people, to share his dream, to bear witness to his sovereignty, and to live the words of Torah.
Be'ana rachet v'lishme kadisha
Kadisha Yakira Ana Emar
Tushbechan Be'ana rachet Be'ana rachet v'lishme kadisha Kadisha Yakira Ana Emar Tushbechan Yehrava Kodamach V'tiftach libi V'yorayta V'tashlim Mishal V'liba Amach Yisrael V'tav V'chayim V'lishlam Amen. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonai Kadosh Shema
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shema Gadol
Adonai iti Aneram Shema Yachdav Lecha Adonai Agdulach Yagdurav Yatiferet V'yanetach V'yahod Ki chol b'shamayim v'aretz Chol b'shamayim v'aretz Lecha Adonai hamamlacha V'amid da'aseh lechol rosh Romamu Adonai Eloheinu V'ishtachamu Lahadam raglav kadoshim Romamu Adonai Eloheinu
V'ishtachavu l'hakodsho
Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Yisrael Ve'oraita Chadhu Yisrael Ve'oraita Chadhu Torah Hallelujah Torah Hallelujah Torah Hallelujah Torah, hallelujah.
Off with the man. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. The 10 Commandments will be read. And Maimonides said, when he's the only one who said, do not stand for the 10 Commandments only recited in the synagogue. But Nachmanides said we should stand. And such was the debate. So the general practice is to rise when we read the Aseret HaDibrot. We are going to begin the Torah reading with the preparation of the revelation at Sinai. We're approximately the year 1290 before the Common Era. And in the middle of the Sinai Desert, if you've ever been there, I was there when it was under Israeli control, 2 weeks on camelback, your rabbi. And it looks like the moon. It hasn't changed much. When you go visit the Bedouins there along the way, it's like going back 3,000 years. It hasn't changed at all. But it's quite an interesting place. And one morning, I forgot which beach it was, a camel came up, licked me and woke me up, one of the other camels. That I will never forget. There was some very distinguished future rabbis on that trip. So anyway, a lot of memories about the Sinai. And one of the questions will be why the why the 10 Commandments were given in Sinai. And why weren't they given in Jerusalem, some special place? Anyway, that's one of the many questions we're going to try to address. Page 436, let's read the text, and then we shall study.
V'yazor v'yagain v'yoshia l'chol ha'chosim bo v'nomar. Amen.
Amen.
Hakol v'godel Eloheinu utnu chavo laTorah. Kohen karav yamdu. Eliyahu ben Yecheskel HaKohen v'ishto Dina Leah bat Le Lealiat Rishona Baruch Shenatan Torah Liamo Yisrael B'Kedushato Yatem Madvikim Badanai Hefem Chayim Kulchem Hayom.
Baruch es Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol monim. V'nasan lanu es toraso. Baruch atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. B'chodesh hashlishi letzeit b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim v'yom hazeh ba'u midbar Sinai v'yis'u merfidim v'yavo midbar Sinai v'yachanu b'midbar v'yichan sham Yisrael neged ahar u'Moshe Allah el ha'Elohim v'yikra elav Adonai min ahar lemor Ko tomar leveit Yaakov et haged levnei Yisrael atem ritem asher asiti lemitzrayim le'asa etchem al kanfei nesharim v'avi etchem elai v'ata im shamoa tishma'u b'koli ushmartem et briti v'hitem li skula mikol ha'amim ki li chol haaretz V'atem tihu li mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh ela advarim asher tedaber el b'nei Yisrael.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher nasan lanu Torah v'emet. V'chayei olam nasa v'sofinu. Baruch atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
And Yasher Koach, dear Dan Elliott, my love. We just read where the source comes from about the Jews Israel being the chosen people. If you notice, the word is Am Segula, which means cherished or treasured people. A lot different than the connotation of the English word chosen. But that's for different classes. And of course the goal, what is the goal of the Jewish people? To be a Mamlechet Kohanim Goy Kadosh, a nation of priests and a holy nation. We go on with the reading.
Yamod, Ben Zion, Feivel, Ben Yaakov, Berut Halevi.
The Levi Aliyah is found on page 438, Pasuk 7.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Elam Vaed.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר ברך בנו מכל עמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
Amen. Vayavo Moshe, vayikra liziknei ha'am, vayasem lifneihem, et kol advarim ha'ele, asher tzivahu Adonai, vaya'anu chol ha'am yachdav, vayomeru, kol asher diber Adonai na'aseh, vayoshev Moshe, et divrei ha'am el Adonai, vayomer Adonai el Moshe, hine anochi ba'a elecha, ba'av ha'anan, ba'avur, yishma ha'am b'dabri imach, v'gam b'cha yaminu le'olam, vayagid Moshe, et divrei ha'am
El Adonai.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בשרכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Yeshikach. Dr. Sykes.
Ben Yochanan Vendel, Ale Hashli.
Thank you.
The third Aliyah is found on page 438, Pasuk 10.
Baruch et Adonai hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Mvorach Elam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lech el ha'am, v'kidashtam hayom umachar, v'chibsu simlotam, v'hayu nechonim layom hashlishi, ki bayom hashlishi yered Adonai v'nei chol ha'am al har Sinai. V'higbaltat ha'am saviv lemor, hishamru lachem, alot bahar ungoa, v'katzehu kohanogea bahar, mot yumat, lo tigabo yad, kisakol yisakel, o yaro yare, im behema im ish lo yifyel, im shach hayavel, ema
Yalu Vahar.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yeshikach. And in memory of your beautiful grandmother, Anna Winterditz. Zichronah livracha.
Ta'amad, Chanabat Yeshua v'Gito Revi'i.
The fourth Aliyah is found on page 439, Pasuk 14.
Baruch et Adonai hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Mvorach Elam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher baka banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayered Moshe min ha'ar el ha'am, vayekadesh et ha'am, ויחפשו שמלותם, ויאמר אל העם, היו נכונים לשלושת ימים, אל תיגשו אל אישה, ויהי ביום השלישי ביות הבוקר, ויהי ביום השלישי ביות הבוקר, ויהי כל עורב רקים וענן כבד על ההר, וקול שופר חזק מאוד, ויחרד כל העם אשר במחנה, ויוצא משה העם לקראת אלוהים מן המחנה, ויתייצבו בתחתית ההר, בהר סיני עשן כולו, מפני אשר ירד עליו אדוני באש, וירא עשנו כשן הכבשן, ויחרד כל ההר מאוד, ויהי קול השופר הולך וחזק מאוד. משה ידבר והאלוהים יעננו בקול.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחי העולם נותן בחנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Yasher koach. Your hand in memory of your loving parents, Gertrude and Oscar Bodenstein. Zichronam livracha. Thank you, Hannah. You always honor us.
Yamod Shalom ben Ezra Meir v'Chana Sarah Chamishi.
The fifth aliyah is found on page 440, Pasuk 20.
And we'll be rising as watched by someone when we get to the Sanctity.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Shocharbono Mikol Ha'amim V'noasan Lonu Et Torah So Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayered Adonai al har Sinai al rosh har. Vayikra Adonai Moshe rosh har. Vayal Moshe. Vayomer Adonai Moshe. Red ha'am. Red ha'ed ba'am. Pen yesu el Adonai lirat. ונפל ממנו רב. וגם הכהנים הניגשים אל אדוני יתקדשו ונפרוץ בהם אדוני. ויאמר משה אל אדוני לא יוכל העם לעלות אל הר סיני, כי אתה עדות בנו למוח, הגבל את ההר וקידשתו. ויאמר אליו אדוני לך רד, ויעלית אתה ואהרון עמך, והכהנים והעם אל יאסור לעלות אל אדוני פן יפרוץ את בם. וירד משה אל העם ויאמר עליהם. וידבר אלוהים את כל הדברים האלה לאמור, אנוכי אדוני אלוהיך אשר הוצאתיך מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים. לא יהיה לך אלוהים אחרים על פניי, לא תעשה לך פסל וכל תמונה אשר בשמיים ממעל ואשר בארץ מתחת ואשר במים מתחת לארץ. לא תשתחווה להם ולא תעבדם, כי אנוכי אדוני אלוהיך אלקנה פוקד עוון אבות על בנים, על שילשים יריבאים לשונאי, ויעשה חסד לאלפים לאוהבי ולשומרי מצוותי. לא תישא את שם אדוני אלוהיך לשווא, כי לא ינקה אדוני את אשר יישא את שמו לשווא. זכור את יום השבת לקדשו, ששת ימים תעבוד, ועשית כל מלאכתך, ביום השביעי שבת לאדוני אלוהיך. לא תעשה כל מלאכה אתה ובנך וביתך, עבדך ואמתך ובהמתך, וגרך שבשעריך, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, את הים ואת כל אשר בם, וינח ביום השביעי. על כן ברך אדוני את יום השבת ויקדשהו. כבד את אביך ואת אמך, למען יאריכון ימיך על האדמה אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך. לא תרצח, לא תנאף, לא תגנוב, לא תנב רעך את שקר. לא תחמוד בית רעך, לא תחמוד אשת רעך, ויעבדו ואמתו ושורו וחמורו וכל אשר
רעך. חזק.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נוטה בסופנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Our honored Aliyah for the Aseret Dvorot Solzetz, a Mazel Tov on the occasion of your birthday celebration, number 79 years young, and your Bar Mitzvah anniversary. 65th. Well, that's in the calculation there. Asher Koach.
Yom Tu. Binyamin Shalom Ben Shlomo David Ve'ishto Minsa Bracha Bat Yehuda Le B'Mitzachaya Shishi.
The Shishi Aliyah is found on page 449, Pasuk 15.
Aruch Adonai Amvarach Elam Vaed.
אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. וכל העם רואים את הקולות ואת הלפידים ואת כל השופר ואת ההר השן וירם וינום ויעמדו מרחוק ויאמרו אל משה דבר אתה עמנו ונשמע ויעלה ידבר עמנו אלוהים פן נמות. ויאמר משה אל העם אל תיראו כי לבעבור נשות אתכם באלוהים ובעבור תהיה יראתו על פניכם לבלתי תחטאו. ויעמודם מרחוק ומשה ניגש אל הערפל אשר שם
האלוהים.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Randy and Mara. Asher Koach, Shabbat. Well, every week is special with you. Asher Koach.
Yamod. Meir Aryeh Ben Chaim Malka Shvi'i.
The Shvi'i Aliyah is found on page 449, Pasuk 19.
Baruch Adonai Amvorach Elam Vaed.
אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
אמן. ויאמר אדוני משה כה תאמר אל בני ישראל אתם ראיתם כי מן השמיים דיברתי עמכם לא תעשון איתי אלוהי כסף ואלוהי זהב לא תעשו לכם מזבח אדמה תעשה לי וזבחת עליו את עולותיך ואת שלומך, את צונך ואת בקריך, בכל המקום אשר אזכיר את שמי אבוא אליך וברכתיך. ומזבח אבנים תעשה לי, לא תבנה אתן גזית, כי חרבך הנפת עליה ותחלליה, ולא תעלה במעלות על מזבחי, אשר לא תגלה ערוותך
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam notah b'dokeinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yeshikoach. Well done. Shabbat Shalom. Please rise, everyone. Misha Be'erah for the Cholim, for all of our dear ones in our prayers and those not mentioned. Misha Be'erah Avotenu, Avraham Yitzchak, Imotenu Sarivka Rechav Leah, Yivarech v'Yirapeh et kol ha'cholim, Tzvi Yitzhak ben Shima v'Chaya, David Yosef ben Chana Basha, Chana Chenover, Yitzchak bat Shulamit, Rivka Shifra bat Sarah Rezel, Talia bat Moshe v'Julie Rachel, John Pakhaber, Leila bat Sega, Abba bat Ilya Halevi, Leah Devorah bat Esther Fruma, Yaakov ben Esther, Leah bat Sarah, Ara Loberbaum, Barbara Bergman, Marvin Birnbaum, Judy Leffler, Rivka bat Sarah, Yaakov Moshe ben Natan v'Chaya, Avraham Shmuel ben Moshe Yankel, HaKadosh Baruch Yimarei Rachem Yimalehem, Achziklam l'Rapotam, V'yishlach lahem Yehira Refuah Shlema min hashamayim, Refuat HaNefesh, Refuat HaGuf, B'tosh Ar Cholim, V'chazek Yididei Hoskim B'tzorchihem, Shabbat Yimizo Krovo Karovo Lavo, Hashtav Yizman Karim V'nomar. Amen. May God, who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bring blessing and healing to all of our loved ones in our thoughts and our prayers this morning on this Shabbat. May the Holy One, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, mercifully restore them to health and to vigor, granting them spiritual and physical well-being, together with all others who are ill. And may God grant strength to those who tend to them in Shabbat, our day of peace, refraining from crying out. We hope and pray that this will lead to healing and to shalom. Peace. Let us say amen.
May the source of strength will bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu, mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema. Renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Yikadal v'yikadash Shemei Rabbah Adivra Kirte v'yamlik malkute B'chayechol uvyamechol Uvchaye dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala Uvizman Kariv V'yimeru Amen Yehesh Me'Rabba Mevarach Le'alam Me'amaya Yitbarak V'yishtabach V'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemek de Kudesha Brichu La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata Damiran Bialma Bimeru Amen. Tamad Davar bat Pinchas Behudit Maftira Chazaka.
The Maftira Leah can be found on page 449, Pasuk 21.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vahed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Vahed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Mizbach Adama Taseli V'zavachta alav Et olotecha v'et shlomecha v'et tzonecha v'et bikarecha B'chol hamakom asher azkir et shemi avo elecha v'rachticha V'mizbach avanim ta'aseli lo tivne tene gazit כי חדך נפת עליה בתחלליה ולא תעלה במעלות על מזבחי אשר
לא
תגלה עברתך
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. A mazel tov to Deborah Bortnick on the occasion of her, can I mention the years? 70th birthday, special birthday. So, Henry Newman.
Yom Huledet Sameach
Yom Huledet Sameach Yom Huledet Sameach Yom Huledet Sameach. Please rise, everyone.
V'zot
HaTorah
Asher Moshe Lifnei Bnei Yisrael
Yad Adonai Yad Moshe.
V'zot HaTorah
Asher
Asher
Moshe
Lifnei Bnei Yisrael Al Pi Adonai B'yad Moshe. V'zot HaTorah
Asher Moshe Lifnei Bnei Yisrael
Al Pi Adonai B'yad Moshe. La 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 la
Please be seated. Keep feel like singing. We're going to hear the chanting of the 6th chapter of the prophet Yeshayahu. The year is approximately 750 before the Common Era. Isaiah prophesied on Har Zion, on Mount Zion. If you've been to Jerusalem, that's where he was 2,700 years ago. And he speaks of the continuing presence of God. And of course, it has been incorporated into our tefillah every single day. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Adonai Tzvot Melech La'aretz Kvodo. It's from Isaiah's words about God's holiness. And those in my class will know that we're going to be speaking about revelation, about the different layers of revelation, the written Torah, the oral Torah, the mystical Torah, commentaries on the Torah. Revelation never stops. It's taking place as we hear the words of Isaiah. Page 452, our bat mitzvah, Deborah Bortnick.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar bin v'im tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hane'emorim be'emet Baruch atah Adonai Habocher b'Torah uveMoshe avdo uveYisrael amo uvinviei ha'emet v'tzedek.
Amen.
Bishnat mot hamelech Uziyahu va'er et Adonai Yoshev al kisei ram v'nisa v'shulav meleim et ha'hechal seraphim omedim ima'alo sheish kenafayim le'echad Bishtayim yechasef anav Uvishtayim yechasef raglav Uvishtayim ye'ofef V'kara zeh el zeh ve'amar Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzavaot, Meloch haaretz kevodo. Vayanu amot hasipim, Mekol hakorei, Vehabayit yimalei ashan. Va'omar oy lichi nidmeti ki ish tamei sefatayim anochi uvtoch am tamei sefatayim anochi yoshev ki et hamelech Adonai tzavot Ra'u einai, vaya'of elai, echad min haserafim, uvyado ritpa, b'melkachayim, lakach me'al hamizbeach, vayagal pi, vayomer Hine nagazeh al sefatecha v'sar avonecha v'chatatecha techupar va'eshma et kol Adonai omer et mi eshlach umi yelech lanu Va'omar hineni shelacheni Vayomer lech ve'armarta la'am hazeh Shimu shamoa ve'al tavinu or ira'o ve'al teida'u Hashmein lev ha'am hazeh ve'oznav hachbeit Ve'einav hasha pen yireh ve'einav uvoznav yishma uvavo yavin vashav v'rafa lo va'omar ad matai Adonai Vayomer ad asher im shahu arim me'ein yoshev uvatim me'ein adam va'adama tisha'eh shemama V'richach Adonai et ha'adam V'rabah ha'azuva B'kerev ha'aretz ועוד בעשירייה, ושבה והייתה לבאר, כאלה וכאלון, אשר בשלכת מצבת בם, זרע קודש מצבתה, ויהי בימי אחז בן יותם בן עוזיהו מלך יהודה, עלה רצין מלך ארם, ופקח רמליהו מלך ישראל ירושלים למלחמה עליה, ולא יכול להילחם עליה. ויוגד לבית דוד לאמור, נחה ארם על אפרים, ויענה לבבו ולבב עמו. כנוע עצי יער מפני רוח, ויאמר אדוני אל ישעיהו, צא נא לקראת אחז, אתה ושאר ישוב בניך אל קצה תעלת הברכה העליונה, אל מסילת שדה חובס, ואמרת אליו, השמר והשקט אל תירא, ובבך אל ירח, משני זנבות האודים האשנים האלה, בכורי אף רצין בארם ובן רמליהו ין. כי יעץ עליך ארם רעה, אפרים ובן רמליהו לאמור, נעלה ויהודה ונקיצנה ונבקיענה אלינו, ונמליך מלך בתוכה את בן תבעל. כי ילד יולד לנו, בן ניתן לנו, ותהי המשרה על שכמו, ויקרא שמו פלא יועץ אל גיבור, אביעד שר שלום. למרבה המשרה ושלום אין קץ, על כיסא דוד והממלכתו, להכין אותה וסעדה במשפט ובצדקה, מעתה ועד עולם קנאת אדוני צבאות תעשה זאת. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל עמים, צדיק בכל הדורות, האל הנאמן, האמר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו, ונאמנים דבריך, ודבר אחד מדבריך אחור לא ישוב ריקם. כי המלך נאמן ורחמן אתה, Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch Shemo.
Ha'el ha'ne'eman b'chol devarav.
Amen.
Rachem al Tzion ki hi beit chayenu v'la'aluvat nefesh toshia bimheira v'yameinu. Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch Shemo.
Misameach Tzion b'vaneha.
Amen.
Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu be'Eliyahu hanavi avdecha uvemalchut Beit David mishichecha b'mheira yavo v'yagel libeinu al kiso lo yeshev zar v'lo yinchalut od acherim et kevodo כי בשם קדשך נשבעת לו, שלא יכבה נרו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני,
ברוך שמו,
מגן דוד.
אמן.
על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה לכבוד ולתפארת על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך יתברך שמך בפי כוחי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני.
ברוך שמו.
מקדש השבת.
Amen. That was a terrific bat mitzvah.
I never had a bat mitzvah.
You never had one
No,
officially?
I had a confirmation.
All right. Well, it's imaginary bat mitzvah.
Yeah.
You did well.
Thank you.
Please rise, everyone. Instead of our prayer for the country,
Thank you.
since last Shabbat we were here not suspecting anything, and then by the end of the day we heard about a hostage situation at a congregation in Texas outside of Dallas. It's again a reminder, a few things, how precarious is our being as Jews in this world. It's been like that for a long time, but even in America it's hard to comprehend. And given an article about how Jews now are going under. I've been asked this question myself because I do have a public profile. I am a rabbi, and I do stick up for Israel and the Jewish people, and I just have to tell you, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to let the mad ones of this earth let me lower my head in any way possible. I'm going to keep doing what we do. We need to be safe. We need to protect ourselves. We're always working on security. We have a marvelous team here led by Joel Servitz, and we will be safe, and we will be proud of who we are. We will continue and thrive. That's the best response to this tear. So I want to today highlight on page 176, let's read together a prayer for those who serve our community. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah bless this entire congregation together with all other holy congregations. They, their families, and all that is theirs, along with those who devote themselves to establish synagogues for prayer, as well as those who enter them to pray, and those who provide for their maintenance, wine for Kiddush and Havdalah, food for guests, bread for the hungry, tzedakah for the poor, and shelter for the homeless, and all who faithfully devote themselves to the needs of this community in the land of Israel. May the Holy One reward them, remove sickness from them, heal them, and forgive their sins. May God bless them by making all their worthy endeavors prosper, as well as those of the entire people Israel, their brothers and sisters. And let us say, Amen. And of course, we always remember Israel, the state of Israel, in our prayers. On page 178, let's read together in the English translation. Avinu Shebashamayim, stronghold and redeemer of the people Israel, the blessed state of Israel, the beginning of our redemption. Shield it with your love. Spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them. Crown their efforts with triumph. Bless the land with peace, and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated as we continue with the Ashrei, page 181. Oh, nice surprise.
Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha, Od Yehavelucha Sela.
Ashrei ha'am shekach lo, Ashrei ha'am Adonai Elohav.
Arami Mecha Elohai HaMelech, Mevarech Hashimcha Leolam Va'ed.
B'chol yom ha'avecha,
Hashimcha Leolam Va'ed. Gadol Adonai Umhula Ma'od, V'ligdulato Ein Cheker. Dor ledor Yishapach Ma'asecha, U'gvuratecha Yagidu. Hadar Kevod Hodecha, V'divrei Niflatecha Asicha.
Ezratecha yom mehiru,
U'gvuratecha Asaprena. Zecher Rav Tuvecha Yabiu, V'sitkatecha Yiranenu.
Hanun Berachum Adonai, Erech Apayim Udol Chesed.
Tov Adonai Lako, V'rachamav Kol Ma'asav.
Yotucha Adonai, Kol Ma'asecha, Chasidecha, V'rachucha.
Kevod Malchucha Yameru, Ugdulatecha Yedaberu.
Hodi Alifnei Adam Gevuratav, Uvod Hadar Malchuto.
Malachutecha Malchut Kol Olamim, Umehem Shaltecha Bechol Dor V'Dor.
Somech Adonai L'chol Hanoflim, Zekol Kechol HaKufim.
Einecha Le'lecha Yisaberu, V'atano Tenachem Et Achlam Be'ito.
Odea et Yadecha, U'maspia L'chol Charatzon.
Tzadik Adonai B'chol Derachav, V'chasid B'chol Ma'asav.
Karov Adonai L'chol Chorav, L'chol Asher Yikra'u V'emet.
Ratzon Yerehav Yaseh, V'et Shavatan Yishman V'yoshihem.
Shomer Adonai et kol ohavav, V'kol Yashaim Yashmin.
Tehillat Adonai Yedaber Pi, Yevareg Al Basar Shem Kachol Elam Va'ed.
V'anachnu nevarech ya, Me'atza v'yad olam. Hallelujah. Please rise. Beautifully done. Pretty darn good.
Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, Ki nizkar Shemo levado, Oda leretz v'shamayim, vayaren keren liyama, Tila lechol chasidav, Libnei Yisrael, Am Kiravo, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Mizmor David, Havu Ladonai b'nei Elim, Havu Ladonai kavod v'az, Havu Ladonai kavod shema, Yishtachavu Ladonai be'adrat kodesh, Kol Adonai l'mayim, El hakavod hirim, Adonai al mayim rabim, Kol Adonai Ba'akoach Be'adar Kol Adonai Shober Arazim Vaishaber Adonai Et Arzei HaLevanon Vayakidem Kemo Higel Levana Besirion Kemo Venereimim Kol Adonai Chotzev Lavotesh Kol Adonai Yachil Midbar Yachil Adonai Midbar Kadesh Kol Adonai Yichol El Hayalot Vayechesof Yarot Uvechala Kulo Merkavot Adonai Lamabul Yashav Vayeshev Adonai Melech Leolam Adonai Oz Liamo Yiten Adonai Yibarech Et Amo V'Shalom U'Menucha Yomah Ki lekach tov natati lachem Torati al tazovu et chayimi lama chazikim ba betolcheha me'ushar deracheha darchei noam b'chol netzivoteha shalom hashivenu Adonai
Ilecha v'nashuva
Kadesh Amenu Kikedem.
Well done. Look, they're still clapping. Shakor. Please be seated, everyone. We have some learning to do. Shabbat Shalom. You know, look at our turnout here. Last night was a regular Kabbalah Shabbat. It was a nice evening. Can't use weather as an excuse. We had about 25 in person. We had another, 29 on stream. I just got, one of the large synagogues in Los Angeles, much larger than ours, has a hard time getting a million on Friday night now. So I know we always want to strive and do better, and we should, but we're doing great. I'm so proud of everybody here, as you know that. I keep reminding you. And the world is crazy, but we're here together. We have a lot of challenges our way. I just want to mention something before I get started. Next week, it couldn't be better timing. Next week, our scholar-in-residence, Dr. Alan Mendoza, will be here. You don't know him, but you will after next week. He's a dynamic speaker. He's one of the most influential Jews in the world, especially when it comes to foreign policy. He is the founder and executive director of the largest think tank in the United Kingdom. He has 75 scholars and researchers on a daily basis, right in the heart, right across the street from the parliament, doing research on all kinds of projects. Israel, anti-Semitism, China, Russia, Ukraine. This is hot off the press we're going to get next week. He meets with all of our elected leaders. He's coming here. He's meeting with officials in Miami when he's finished with us. And he is one of the most influential Jews leaders in the world. And it couldn't be better timing. So I implore you to come here next week. He'll be here. We struck up, I have some good friends. We struck up a very close relationship. It's very rare for him to make these kinds of appearances, but we plotted this a while ago. And he'll be introduced, really one of the brilliant spokespersons and advocates for Israel around the world. He's an amazing human being. And by the way, don't get thrown off by the last name Mendoza. His family, Jewish family, has been in England, part of the Sephardic background, since the 17th century. So as you'll see, he's a very observant Jew, but very contemporary as well. So we will welcome him, and I'll be very anxious, as all of you, to hear what he has to say about what's going on around the world. So let's, oh, by the way, let me just go through the schedule a little bit, because, originally we were going to have a big Shabbat dinner and be together, and COVID restricts us, so we're going to have a very private meal for him, and his chief of staff is coming with him. I forgot her name, but she'll be here with him for all of the, she's Jewish, not particularly observant, but he said she'll be coming. And we'll have Shabbat dinner. We'll have our regular Kabbalat Shabbat Marif service at 6:30. And then he will speak here from the synagogue. We were going to have him speak at the dinner, but we can't do that. All of our events must take place here now. So he will speak. We'll have time for questions and answers. And that's Friday night. Then Saturday morning, we'll have our regular Shabbat service. He has the 6th Aliyah. And we're going to have our regular service, including Birkat HaChodesh is coming up. And then he'll speak from here again following the service. We'll have some box lunches for everybody when we leave. That's the best we can do. So we're going to be here. And then Sunday morning, we were going to have a men's club sisterhood breakfast. And guess what? We can't do that either. So, but he will be here at 10 o'clock, and he'll speak, have his third speech. By that time, we'll have lots of questions for him. So the topic for today is the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 Commandments. And let me just mention a few things before we get into how they work. And a lot of it different interpretations, but I'm going to share you. I think what is really significant, it came from the great Abraham Ibn Ezra of the 12th, 13th century, the great Spanish Jewish Meforash commentator on the Torah. The 10 Commandments, what we've just read, is the only claim in the entire written Torah as we have it of God speaking to Moses, and then Moses, of course, bringing the tablets. It's the only revelation in the entire Torah. The idea that the entire written Torah was all given by God came later from rabbinic sources. The only claim in the Torah is made of the revelation at Har Sinai. The rest is rabbinic, the oral law, the rest of the written Torah. Because it's such a heart of the Torah, the question that was raised is why didn't we include the 10 Commandments in our tefillah every day? We Shirat Hayam, we have the Shema, the paragraphs of the Shema. You would think that the 10 Commandments would have been slipped in there somewhere on a regular basis. Well, it used to be. It used to be part of our liturgy, and then eventually was eliminated because the Christians were claiming that there are very few laws in the Torah, and the 10 Commandments being at the heart. They would read the 10 Commandments in the first chapter of Genesis, or the beginning chapters of Genesis. So our sages said, wait a minute, that gives a wrong message here. The Torah is the entire Torah. And so therefore, that's how the 10 Commandments were taken out of our daily liturgy, which is interesting. The 10 Commandments, as we know them in Jewish tradition, is slightly different than the way you will see them written in Christian Bibles and Christian understanding. They take our first statement and they eliminate that, and they divided our number 2 into their 1 and 2 about idolatry. So it's interesting about that. as well. The Torah makes the only claim that these are the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 sayings. The idea of 10 mitzvot is not mentioned in the Torah, just Aseret HaDibrot. So that's how the rabbis included the first statement as being so essential to the 10 Commandments. There is a great deal of discussion about the 10 Commandments. I don't have to tell you, in the Talmud, there is a question about how much God actually revealed to Moses, to the people of Israel. And there are different views about that. Some say just the first 2 commandments, because those are the only 2 commandments written in the singular person. The rest were written in the plural. Then there are some that say just the first word, Anochi. And then there's some authorities that say only the Aleph, the first letter. And Rabbi Abraham Heschel wrote a whole book about how God spoke with a letter and the rest is commentary. But that's a very interesting discussion as well, which we're going to take up at the holiday of Shavuot, when we have our Tikkun, Leil Shavuot. This is the first time in history it's a revolutionary text. So whether we believe in God or don't believe in God, we have to understand that this shook the entire understanding of how the world was perceived in the nations around the people of Israel. It's the first time in history that commandments were detached from government, king, and ruler. God to the people. And then there's the question of whether these commandments were supposed to be given just to Israel or to all the nations of the world. What's interesting is the commandments, as I mentioned, were given in the middle of the Sinai desert somewhere. We don't know where it is. I climbed Mount Sinai when I was there. It was a designation in the 4th century. They picked the highest mountain peak, and then the monks said, that's Mount Sinai. So it was a real challenge walking up there, but it's not Har Sinai. And the reason why we don't know where it is exactly is because the Torah doesn't want our people worshiping mountains and places. And even Moses, we don't know where he's buried. So the idea was the commandments are beyond the physical. And they were given to the people of Israel, but of course there are tremendous universal implications for the commandments as well. There were 2 sets of tablets. If you remember, we're getting to that part where Moses comes down. He breaks the first tablet that were inscribed by God. And then he comes down. We're going to be reading in Ki Tisa, the portion about God coming down with a second set of tablets. And those tablets appear to have been written by Moses with God dictating, but written by Moses. And that's where the rabbis get this idea of a partnership of revelation between God and the people. So it gets very, very interesting with that as well. And as I mentioned before, we stand when the 10 Commandments, the Aseret HaDibrot, are read in the synagogue. Maimonides was opposed to that practice, and they really had quite a discussion about that. Because Maimonides didn't want the 10 Commandments to be too highlighted, forgetting the 603 others. But that was the debate. So, we have freedom from Egypt last week. We have the giving of the Aseret HaDibrot this week, the constitution of the Jewish people. Next week, Mishpatim, we're going to read about the legislation, the details. And then the next week, we're going to read of the building of the tabernacle, Truma, which is our response. Building a society based upon the 10 Commandments of Mishpatim is much more difficult than just reading about them. So there's freedom, Aseret HaDibrot, Mishpatim, and Truma. It's all one package deal, and it's quite incredible. As we know, the Torah tells us that the commandments were divided into 2 tablets, Shnei Luchot HaBrit, 2 tablets that were brought down from Sinai. And we do note that in the division of the commandments, that there are 2 different divisions, the first 5 commandments and the second 5 commandments. First 5 commandments are Bein Adam Lamakom, the commandments that are given to us in our relationship with God, And then the second set of commandments are given bein adam lechavero, between the commandments that we have that govern our human relations. Now, Rabbi Sachs, if we have time, I'll get to his. He divided the commandments into 3 triads and then the 10th. It's an interesting idea, but I want to take Ibn Ezra's idea. I've written at length about this, and it's really, I think, very important. I'm going to take you through the commandments, and I want you to see how the commandments are related to each other, why they stand in a very particular way. So let's start with the first commandment. The first commandment is just a statement. Anochi Adonai Elohecha, I am the Lord your God, shehotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim mi-beit avadim. I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, who brought you out of the house of bondage. Why is this a statement? Well, that's the question. Can you command God belief or not? Maimonides felt that it was a commandment. This was a commandment. One must, as a Jew, have faith in God. And Nachmanides felt it was just a statement. Everything begins with God. Nothing makes sense. The reason why this is first is none of the other commandments, from our perspective, mean anything without God. If there's no understanding of a universal law that governs societies, it all must begin with God. And that's why, just one other brief thing, it also tells us, the first statement, that God brought us out of the house of bondage. And that is very interesting because it's about a God who didn't just create the universe, but a God who interacts with us in history. And that's not just limited to the Jewish people. So that has to be the first commandment, statement, depends on which school of authority you're with. And what would be the logic of the second commandment? You shall not have any other gods before you. And then images of them is next. But that's all commentary on number 2. As many have pointed out with human beings, if there's no God at the top of our pyramid of beliefs, human beings tend to substitute something else. We've seen this through history. And sometimes those things we might assume are very good, like education, or music, or even family, or even love. Anything that's a substitute for God becomes, in the view of the Torah, idolatrous. I always love using the classic example of education. You know, Nazi Germany was, if you didn't have an education there, you were really persona non grata. In order to be an Einsatzgruppen, a major assassin of those who were chosen to go in on June 22nd, 1941, with the Barbarossa campaign and through Ukraine, you had to have a master's degree. Otherwise, you wouldn't qualify to be the chief assassins of the Jewish people going through. The primacy of education. Mengele was a brilliant scientist who did all those medical experiments. Even science, medicine, can be turned upside down if it becomes idolatrous. And so the second commandment warns us that when God is substituted, and we've lived in the 20th century, when, as Lenin and Marx made it very clear that human beings are taking the place of God, you create the most idolatrous situation of all. The worship of human beings, the worship of images, the worship of anything besides God is the major violation of commandment number 2. God, idolatry, and what is third? Lo tisad shem Adonai l'shav. You shall not take God's name in vain. It's usually translated, but if you look at the Hebrew, it doesn't really say that, because most people say, well, we're not allowed to swear, we're not going to use bad language when we speak of God. That's not what the commandment says. It says, do not lift, lo tisa, don't lift the name of God for vain purposes. In other words, Ayatollah in Iran, we know that he's not an idolater, right? He believes in God. He prays 5 times a day. He's a very religious man. But when he goes out and uses the name of God to kill people, he is violating this 3rd commandment like you cannot believe. And every time there's a violation of the abuse of the name of God, in the name of God, we're going to kill people or declare the annihilation of the state of Israel. God is calling us. You cannot do that in the name of God. That is horrendous. So you might not be an idolater, but you are violating number 3. You cannot use God's name for a false purpose. What is the correct purpose? Number 4. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat. Sabbath. Shabbat is the only ritual of the 10 commandments because Shabbat symbolizes the proper use of God, which is to make peace. Shabbat Shalom. Social justice as spoken of in the version in the book of Deuteronomy. The exact opposite of abusing God's name in number 3. The correct witnessing to God, if you will, in contrast to number 3, is Shabbat. Today, every week, the most important of Jewish observance in our calendar, whether it be here, anywhere in the world, and for all time. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat. We did well as a community, by the way, the last few weeks. Those who know what I'm talking about. Shabbat. Number 5. Kabet et avicha v'et imecha. Honor your father and your mother. I thought that the commandments were just about ourselves and God. How does the honoring your mother and your father come into play? Well, rabbis have a field day with this one. The bridge between heaven and earth are our parents. Our parents are the ones who, in our tradition, transmit the name of God to their children so they can live in society. And of course, honoring, it doesn't say in the commandments, love your mother and your father. Almost in the sense that's assumed. It's easy to love your parents, but to honor them, which means when they pass away and you come to shul and recite Kaddish, you're honoring your parents. Of course you love them, but you honor them when they're here and when they're not here. You honor their lives and their values. Number 5. Now we move to the commandments that govern society. The first commandment, lo tirtzach, you shall not murder. Of course, for any society to exist, as we're experiencing to a large extent, when there is lawlessness and people getting killed, crime is on the rise here. We feel that things are shattered. Things are falling apart. 6th commandment, the very basis of all society is the sanctity of human life. You shall not murder. It doesn't say lo taharog. You'll see that translation in the King James Version, 16:19. You shall not kill. It doesn't say you shall not kill. Because in order to protect the state of Israel, yes, the evil have to be killed. Yes, the fellow who came and attempted to harm those people in the synagogue, he loses his life. That's not murder. That is proper self-defense to preserve life. Without those weapons in those hands of all those Jewish kids, boys and girls in the state of Israel, there wouldn't be a state of Israel today. We live in a rough world. But you can't take one life wantonly. You shall not murder. And then lo tin'af. You shall not commit adultery. As the relationship is related to number 2, about the relationship with God, about not having substitutes for God, Ibn Ezra understands that the 7th commandment, you shall not, when you have a love relationship, substitute one for the other. It's the same as idolatry. And so that's why that is the 2nd pillar, and we have a lot of work to do. It is estimated now that 50% of Americans are living by themselves. The family institution is not doing well. You cannot have a strong society. By the way, a little added note here. When we were at the Chaffetz's, and I forgot his name, the tradesman the one from the Jewish News Network, yeah. And we asked him about what he thinks of America. Remember that? And he said, well, Israel has some of the same political issues going on, but the one thing that I know about Israel, that even whether you're religious or non-religious, they're having families, and that's something that's not taking place here. And that's why he doesn't worry about Israel in the long run. Family, family, family. So, murdering, family institution. What's number 8? We talked about it last night. Lo tignov, you shall not steal. That is the layer of the material possessions of the society, the respect for people's belongings, heavy taxation. The Stalinist system is very bad. It confiscates property from people. All this stuff with Ukraine, by the way, goes back to the early years between Russia and Ukraine. And we know that the relationship was very, very bad. You shall not steal. And then, number 9, what does that say? You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Shabbat is a witness to God. And then it says in number 9, you should not bear false witness against your neighbor. So it's about our court system. It's about about jurisprudence, about respecting human beings. The rabbis understood it to mean prohibitions against lashon hara and gossip and destroying people's reputations. It's not just a courtroom in which we hurt other human beings. Another layer. And then number 10, al tachmod, you shall not covet that which belongs to another. It's the only commandment that attempts to legislate thought. You should not think about that which belongs to your neighbor. And the idea being number 10 is, this is the final bridge to the rest of life. To know who you are, what your values are, and to have proper value systems as now you take number 10 and go into the rest of society. So those are the 10 commandments. They all fit. They are timeless. They are pearls. It's an incredible inheritance we have, and they do, of course, not only have implications for us, the Jewish people, for all humanity. We'll leave Rabbi Sachs's words for later, otherwise it will be too long. But I hope you enjoyed going through these commandments and what they mean to us. So, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Please rise. Let's continue our service now with the Musaf service, which begins on page 184. Don Friedman is back. We are very happy. 184. Chatzi Kaddish.
Yiskadal v'yiskadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Yalma divrach yirisei, yamlich malchusei,
v'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayedechol beit Yisrael, b'gala, uv'izman kariv, Amen. Yeshmei Rabba Mevarach, Le'olam Lo Me'omaya, Yibarach,
Yisbarach v'yishtabach, v'yispar v'yisramam v'yisnaseh, v'yishadar, v'yis'aleh, v'yishalal, Shmei Dekusha Berechu Le'ela Min Kol Birchasa V'Shirasa
Tush B'chatza V'nehemata Damiran B'yama Amen. Together on page 185 we begin the Amidah, Musaf Shabbat through Kedusha, and after the Kedusha the remainder silently through page 192.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avosseinu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zocher Chastei Avos, Umevi Goel Livnei B'neihem, Lema'an Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer Fokedu Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah, Atah Gibor Li'olam Adonai, Mechaye Mesim Atah Rav Lahoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye Mesim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Nochlim Berofei Oholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Umidam Elach, Melech Meimit Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman Atolachayos Mesim, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaMesim.
Amen. Ari Tzevadach Dishka Kesos Yisar Sofe Kodesh. Amak Dishim Shimcha Kadosh Kakatuvi Anavi Echaflose. Azavi Amah.
Naritzko v'nakdishcha kesod siach sarfei kodesh hamakdishim shimcha b'kodesh kakasu v'yad nevi'echa v'kara hazel ze ve'amar
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevot, Melech Haaretz Kavodo. Kavodo Mani Lama Shotav Shonim Zelazeh, Ayim Ekem Kavodo Matam Baruch Yomeru.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevos, Melech Haaretz Kavodo. Kavodo Malei Olam, Mishor Sav Shoalim Zelazeh, Aye Mekom Kevodo, L'umasam Baruch Yomeru.
Baruch Kavod Adonai Min Komo, Min Koyvim Barachmim Bechonach Nipshimo, Erev Avok Bechoyam Tam, Amen Biva Shemo.
Baruch Kavod Adonai, Mim Komo, Mim Komo. Mim Komo, Hu Yifen Berachamim, V'yachanam Ham Yachadim Shemo, Erev v'avoker bechol yom tamid, Pa'amayim be'ava, Shema omrim.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. O Eloheinu, Avinu, O Malkeinu, O Moshiachenu, O Avinu. Veho, 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 Yashmi'enu, Yashmi'enu, Berachamav, Shenis, 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 Lienei Kol, Veho, 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 Yashmi'enu, Yashmi'enu, Berachamav, Shenis, 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 Lienei Kol Chai. Lios lachem lelohim,
Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Uvdivrei kodshecha kasuv lemor.
Yimloch Adonai Elam Elohim Sion. V'tov Ador, hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Ledor vador nagid God lecha. Ulenetzach netzachim kedushascha nakdish. V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu layamush li'olam va'ed. Ki el melech gadol v'kadosh ata. Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch Shemo.
Ha'el hakadosh.
Amen. Tikata Shabbat, Tzita Kabbalateva. Korban Tim Timim Zikranef. Musaf Yom HaShabbat. Yom HaShabbat. Shomrei Shabbat. Atov Gidon Chalom. Sim Shalom. Keep it water. Zakin Sifar Shabbat Sweet Yom Shabbat Kodesh Kaddish Shalem.
Yiskadav Yiskadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Yamad Yibrachu Sev Yamlich Machusei B'chayechon of Yamechon of Chayedechol Beis Yisrael B'agalav Isman Karev Le'imru
Amen. Yeshmei Rabbah Mefarach Yallam Lo Mehamaya Yiparach
Yisbarach, Yishtabach, Yisbar, Yisroman, Yisnasev, Yishadar, Yishalev, Yishalal, Shemei Dekudsha.
Barichu.
Le'ela Mikol Berchosa V'shirasa, Tishchasa V'nechamasa, Da'amiram B'yamav Imru. Amen. תתקבל צלצון ובלצון דכל ישראל, קדם אבון דבשמיה ואמרו, אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו, אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום. עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו,
Amen. In Kelohenu, page 204.
אין כאלוהינו,
אין כאדוננו,
אין כמלכנו, אין כמושיענו, מי כאלוהינו,
מי כאדוננו,
מי כמלכנו, מי כמושיענו, נודה
לאלוהינו,
נודה לאדוננו, נודה למלכנו, נודה למושיענו, ברוך אלוהינו, ברוך אדוננו, ברוך מלכנו, ברוך מושיענו. אתה הוא אלוהינו, אתה הוא אדוננו, אתה הוא מלכנו, אתה הוא שמשיענו, אתה הוא שהגדירו אבותינו לפניך את קטורת הסמים. עלינו, page 205. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל,
לתת גדולה יוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם. They're fine, they're fine. גור עלינו ככהמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נותן שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו השמיים ממעל, ושכינה תזול בגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אינו, אמת מלכנו, אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, ידעת היום והשיב אותה אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד.
על כן נקווה לך אדוני אלוהינו, לירס מהרה בספר סוסך, להעביר גילולים מן הארץ, והאלילים קרא שקרסום, לשכן עולם במלכות שדי, וכל בני בשר יקראו בשמך, להפנות אליך כל ראשי הארץ, יכירו וידעו כל יושבי תבל, כי לך תכרע כל ברך, תשבע כל לשון, לפניך אדוני אלוהינו יקראו ויפולו, ולכבוד שמך יקראתנו, ויקבלו כולם אצל מלכותך, ושמלוך עליהם מהרה לעולם ועד, כי המלכות שלך היא ולעולמי עד, תמלוך בכבוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר
והיה אדוני
Hamelech al kol haaretz, hayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shmo echad.
Please be seated, everyone. As we pause to remember the yard sites observed this week, the month of Shvat, of Jeanette Katz, Alastair Brand, Sarah G. Engert, Bertram Bernstein, Keith Dessenberg, Mina Edlin, Milton Ellerin, Fanny Wolf, Arthur Blumberg, Ethel Posnick, Florence Bernstein, Eugene Green, Sam Garbus, George Freund, Alfred Lapidus, Alan Lichtenstein, Sylvia Tract, Carolyn Levine, Sarah Miller, Georgette Nachon, Jacqueline Jackie Prohovsky Horwitz, Lillian Prohovsky Jaffe, Oscar Bodenstein, Gertrude Bodenstein, Martin Ross, Carl Rothman, Louis Waynick, Sonia Ginsberg, Jenny Matlow, Esther Lieberman Stulberg, Anna Wintermitz, Abraham Ditkoff, Pinkas Alpern, Judge Marvin E. Silverman, Ernesto Glogauer, Erwin Losch, Gerhard Singer, Irene Wright, Zichronam Livrachal of blessed memory. So those remembering yard sites and those in mourning, please rise, proclaim our love, gratitude for their lives and memories, the power of memory. Page 207. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach v'lam lo me'almaya, yiparach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shmei d'kudusha Brechu, Leila min kol bechata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran bi'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Ose shalom b'imromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Please be seated. Valda, are you up for the announcements?
Shabbat Shalom. I'm Valda Kay, and on behalf of the board of the synagogue, I welcome you all today, both in-house and at home. Wonderful turnout. Thank you, Rabbi Altshuler, for this very significant service dealing with our 10 Commandments, and thank you for sharing your wonderful wisdom.
It's my honor.
And thank you, a huge thank you for all our very talented readers. Serenay, that was the first, I hope, of many. Yasher Koach. The Bima Basket sponsors are Deborah Bortnick on the occasion of her 70th birthday, and I'm convinced there's a typo there. Michael Krasnow in honor of Carol's birthday, and Sandy Kligman in honor of the engagement of her granddaughter, Dr. Samantha Sanders, to Michael Gleason. Mazel tov to all of you. And then a few words about the programming. Rabbi has covered very in detail the events for next weekend, which will be I'm sure most interesting and very exciting. Thank you, Rabbi, for that connection and making it all happen. The Piedmont weekend will be the weekend of February the 11th. Please reserve your seats for the concert. And then Rabbi Altshuler will continue his lectures each Tuesday and Wednesday mornings between 10 and 11:30. These are outstanding. Please help yourself to a box lunch, and the cupcakes today are in honor of Deborah Bortnick.
Cupcakes, that's a nice twist.
Thank you, Deborah, for your leadership at TBS and for all you do. We recognize your outreach to our congregants who are in need. You have served us for so many years. We are deeply grateful for all your kindness and generosity. You are much loved. Thank you, Deborah. Enjoy the cupcakes and the box lunch. Shabbat Shalom.
Enjoy them too much. That's the problem. Thank you, Valda, so much. Let's conclude with Adon Olam on page 211, followed by our Kiddush and Birkat Kohanim.
Adon Olam Asher Malach B'Terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Li'ez Nasa B'Nefso Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'Yacharei Kichlos HaKol Levado Yimloch Nara V'Hu Haya V'Hu Oveh V'Hu Yeh B'Sifara V'Hu Yeh B'Sifara V'Hu Echad V'En Sheni V'Hamshich Lo L'Hachira B'Li Reishim B'Li Tachlis V'Lo Ha'oz V'Ha'misra V'Lo Ha'oz V'Ha'misra V'Hu Eli V'Chai Goali V'Tzur Chevli V'Esara V'Hu Nisi Umanosli Menas Kosi B'Yom Ekra Menas Kosi B'Yom Ekra B'Yado Afki Ruchi B'Esishan B'A'ira B'Imruchi G'B'Yasi Adonai Lev Elohira Adonai Lev Elohira V'Shamru B'nei Yisrael Shabbat Lasot et HaShabbat L'Dorotam Barit Olam Beini Uvein B'nei Yisrael Oti Li'olam Ki Sheshet Yemim Asa Adonai Et HaShamayim V'et HaAretz V'yom Hashvi'i Shabbat Vayinafash Al Kein Berach Adonai Yom Shabbat V'Kadshehu Savri Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Borei Bri HaGafen. It's getting sweeter every week. B'Shutchem Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Motzi Lechem Min Haaretz. You have a recha? You want to do Birkat Kohanim? Don? Want to do Birkat Kohanim? Kids are fun. I love having children. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
May God bless you and keep you from every harm.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka.
May God bring you light. May God bring us light and love to grace our days.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
May God lift us never to be afraid. Fear nothing. Be good Jews. Walk on the paths of Torah. And may you all be blessed with shalom. Peace. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Well done. You threw me up. That's right. That's right. It's right there. It's right in the past tense.